Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Vikings Now by Chat Sports. My name is Patrick Siepman, and coming up on today's show, we're going to be looking at an NFL trend that should have major impact on the Minnesota Vikings. It actually comes from Kevin O'Connell's mentor, Sean McVay. So we'll dive into that first on today's show, but then later, speaking about the tight end position, we will be talking about TJ Hockenson. Will he be a tight end for the Vikings in 2026? We'll break it down on the second half of today's show. But the trend I want to start with is the usage of 13 personnel across the NFL. Now, if you guys don't know, 13 personnel is one wide receiver, three tight ends, and the Los Angeles Rams have been using 13 personnel more than any team this season and more than any team I have seen in recent memory. As they are running 13 on almost a quarter of their snaps offensively so far this season. The biggest reason why they're running 13 personnel so much is because they have been incredibly successful. I mean, the EPA being 54.37 is absolutely ridiculous, and their EPA per pass, very, very high. Now, you would assume that your EPA per run would actually be higher since you do have three tight ends on the field. You got some bigger bodies out there, but they are incredibly effective passing the football, 0.46 EPA, and that's in the plus, and then 0.14 EPA per run, which is unreal stuff out of this guy, Sean McVay. And, you see that number, 54.37. That's huge, but the league average in EPA and 13 personnel is actually in the negative, which is incredibly, positive for the Rams and how they want to run their offense is that they're finding so much success using those three tight ends. So we'll discuss how this kind of impacts the Minnesota Vikings, what they should do in their personnel usage here just in a second. But speaking about this game, this upcoming weekend, if you guys want J.J. McCarthy to have another good game, don't go down there. Hit that thumbs up icon for us. I want JJ to keep on stacking these good performances. So if you guys want to have him have his third good game in a row, go down there, hit that thumbs up icon. So Sean McVay this season, and I think this is kind of getting under talked about, on ESPN, Fox Sports, some of these big time sports media publications. I don't really think they're talking enough about the 13 personnel usage from Sean McVay and the Los Angeles Rams because it has truly became the new meta in the NFL. Is using multiple tight end sets. You're going heavy in a lot of these formations, and you're allowing yourself for these teams or defenses this year, especially at the first half of the season, they're running nickel more than they ever have in the NFL's history. But now McVay, to combat that, he's like, okay, if you're going to run nickel, I'll just put 2-3 tight ends out there and we'll get downhill. And the Vikings, they barely run 13 personnel. Like I said earlier, the Rams run 13 on almost over a quarter of their snaps. So the Vikings run 13 personnel on 2.82% of their snaps. And the Vikings, they live out of 11 personnel. The league average for 11 is around 57%, but Kevin O'Connell, he loves using it 65.94% of the time. Then two tight end sets, he uses it about 22% of the time. And when I see this, my immediate thought is, why the hell did we pay Josh Oliver? You have one of the better run blocking tight ends in the league paired up with TJ Hockenson. Why aren't you using multiple tight end sets more? I just do not understand that. And what's even more concerning is the EPA breakdown in certain personnels for the Vikings. When they're running 11, it is the second worst in the National Football League out of every single personnel grouping at negative 68.48. That is horrible. But the Vikings, the only personnel grouping that they are successful in is 13 in terms of EPA throughout the entire season. So hopefully KOC obviously probably knows these stats too. This is not mind-breaking stuff that Kevin O'Connell's seen this. He's like, oh, wow, like maybe we should run 13 personnel more. Like he obviously knows all this. And, I will say like it does make some sense why Kevin O'Connell wants to live out of 11 personnel. Like you got three really good wide receivers with Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, and Jalen Naylor. So in his thought process, he's probably like, why would I not have three of my better players offensively out there on the football field as much as I can? However, he should have adjusted earlier. Like he should have noticed this trend closer to like week 6 and 7 of this season instead of as over the last couple of weeks, he has started to use 13 personnel a lot more over the last 2 weeks. So that is good that Kevin O'Connell last 2 weeks has adjusted a little bit because heading into that Commanders game, the Vikings have only ran 13 personnel 5 plays. Commanders game, they did it 10. Don't know the exact number of how often they used it against the Cowboys, but it was around that 10 number as well. So at least he has adjusted and he has, changed up his offensive philosophy a little bit because even Sean McVay, like he was the king of 11 personnel. Like that was kind of McVay's thing, especially when they went on that Super Bowl run with OBJ, Cooper Kupp. Like they were putting a lot of receivers out there and they just had an advantage on the outside every week. But McVay has changed. And, I think we all talk about as Vikings fans where it's like, oh, we need to be patient. We need to let J.J. McCarthy develop. But I think the same can be said about our head coach. I've been super critical of Kevin O'Connell this year, not putting his quarterback in advantageous spots throughout the season, like what he did to Max Brosmer. I thought was criminal. What he's been doing to J.J. McCarthy, especially early on in the season, just never changing his philosophy. I think he was setting him up for failure, not success. So, we all talk about J.J. developing. Well, how about you let your head coach develop? And he has developed. Like the past 2 weeks, running 13 personnel more than he's ever has as the Vikings head coach, running the football more quick game and quick pass game concepts. Like at least KOC has kind of noticed the trends in the NFL, especially coming from his mentor, Sean McVay, and he has been changing his ways over the last couple of weeks. So hopefully that does continue for the rest of the season. I want you guys to get down in the comment section and grade Kevin O'Connell as the Vikings head coach this season. I think he's been better the last 2 weeks, but I can't give him an A or a B. I would probably be around a C, C minus. Also considering like the standard for Kevin O'Connell. I mean, the guy was just coming off a Coach of the Year award. I mean, last year was probably an A grade for Kevin O'Connell being the Vikings head coach. But this year, I'll probably go around that C, C minus range. Now we'll talk about TJ Hockenson here in just a second, but I do got to tell you guys about today's presenting sponsor, and that is Factor Meals. Now, if you guys want to eat smart, head over to factormeals.com/VikingChat50 off and use promo code VikingChat50 off to get 50% off your first box plus free breakfast for 1 year. Now, eating well during the holiday season can feel impossible. That's why I use Factor's chef-prepared, dietitian-approved meals to help me stay balanced and energized through the most indulgent time of the year. And Factor, they have way more variety and way more meals. You guys can choose from a wider selection of weekly meal options, including premium seafood choices like salmon and shrimp at no extra cost. And living a busier lifestyle here at Chat Sports, covering the Minnesota Vikings, sometimes I don't feel like making a home-cooked meal when I get off of work. That's where Factor has came in and changed my life. So if you guys could, head over to factormeals.com/VikingChat50 off and use promo code VikingChat50 off to get 50% off your first box plus free breakfast for 1 year. That is promo code VikingChat50 off at factormeals.com for 50% off your first box plus free breakfast for 1 year. This exclusive holiday offer won't last, so lock in your savings before the New Year rush. Offer only valid for new Factor customers with code and qualifying auto-renewing subscription purchase. All right, so we're going to dive into a bunch of numbers here and discuss if it makes sense for the Vikings to cut TJ Hockenson, because I think a lot of us kind of assume that this will be his last year as the Vikings tight end, which is kind of messed up that we're talking about this right now, because I thought he had his best game of his season against the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, he had 4 catches, going for 66 yards, getting targeted only 5 times, and I thought he was just, kind of looked like his prime version of himself, where he was, making guys miss. He was had some great late and soft hands, especially that one corner route he caught from J.J. McCarthy where he was blocking for about a second and a half, peeled off, caught that corner. It was a really, really good play for T.J. Hockenson. But let's talk about the financial situation here. So we're going to dive through a bunch of numbers, so stay with us. But Hockenson's 2026 contract details. If they cut him pre-June 1, you would have about $12.5 million in dead cap money, and you would save around $9 million, so a net negative about 3. But if you make him a post-June 1 cut, you would save a whole lot more, which I think out of all the scenarios we're going with right now, this is probably the most likely option, is that the Vikings do end up cutting him, and then they do end up saving $16 million post-June 1. Now, you can't designate guys. You can designate up to 2 players every year to be a post-June 1 cut. So if the Vikings, like right as the season ends, you can just designate Hawk as a post-June 1 cut and save those $16 million. But let's just say the Vikings try to trade him. Now, this would be pre-June 1. You would still have the same thing, $12 million dead money, around $9 million in cap savings. So that doesn't really give the Vikings too much of an advantage unless you do want to get some extra draft capital. So it's really, what do you value? Do you value that extra, 5th, 6th round pick you could get for Hawk, or do you value that extra, $12 million you could save in free agency? But let's just say the Vikings do run it back with Hawk and they end up cutting him before the 2027 season. Well, the cap savings will obviously go up. You would save around $18 million there, and then you would only take on about $5 million in dead cap. Now, let's just say you wanted to trade Hawk the next offseason. You would also save a little bit more money. It's around $7 million in dead money, and then you would save around $16 million with the cap savings. So it's a little tricky situation, but I definitely think the most likely option is that the Vikings want to make a post-June 1 cut where you'd save those $16 million and you would also only take on 5.35 of dead money. Now, the only problem with cutting TJ Hockenson, and kind of what we were talking about at the first half of today's show of using multiple tight ends, is if you do cut TJ Hockenson, the Vikings tight end room would become below average. Like, I love Josh Oliver. He is a fantastic tight end. He is one of the best tight end twos in the NFL because of what he does in the run game. Also has some really soft hands. He's been making plays over the last couple of weeks. I still can't get over Chris Collinsworth saying Josh Oliver's game against the Commanders, one of the best performances he has seen all year. Chris, he had 2 catches for 25 yards and 2 touchdowns. I thought that was absolutely hilarious. But I think this would open up the door for the Vikings maybe targeting somebody in the draft. And Kenyon Sadiq, the tight end out of Oregon. Now, obviously, with the college football playoff starting this weekend, if you guys want a fun player to watch, this is him. Sadiq, he could be a sneaky draft target for the Minnesota Vikings. This dude is a bad MFer. He loves to jump over people. I mean, you go turn on his highlight tape, you'll see this guy trying to hurdle about 10 to 20 guys through a 10-minute highlight video. This guy's an absolute stud. Now, a little undersized, only 6'2", but he's physical in the run game. He's also a physical in the passing game where he'll just kind of throw off a linebacker with the shoulder, create some separation, has really good hands, a freak athlete. You guys can just kind of see his legs and his athletic ability in this photo, but I really highly recommend go throw on his highlight tape after you watch today's show. So watch out for this guy being a sneaky draft target, especially at the Vikings. Maybe they miss out on Caleb Downs, miss out on Mansour Delane, maybe they miss out on Jeremiah Love. This could be a sneaky guy the Vikings could draft. But you guys let me know. Would you move on from Hawk? Should the Vikings cut TJ Hockenson? Give me a Y for yes or an N for no down below. And we'll get on out of here. As always, SKOL Vikes.